My name is James, and for 10 years I thought my marriage was built on trust, love, and loyalty. I was wrong. My wife, Olivia, shattered everything I believed in, not with subtle whispers or hidden gestures, but with open flaunting of her affair. At first, I tried to ignore the signs, the lingering glances, the secretive smiles, and the way she looked at her colleague, Ethan, with eyes full of desire. But one night, at a party in my own home, it became undeniable. The way Olivia leaned into Ethan, the way their hands brushed against each other, and the gleam in her eyes made it clear she was no longer mine. But I wasn't going to confront her in the heat of the moment. I was going to make her regret this betrayal in a way she'd never forget. I spent weeks planning my revenge with precision, gathering evidence and making strategic moves to turn her perfect world upside down. When the time was right, I unveiled her affair to everyone in a public spectacle that left her reputation shattered. This is the story of how I took back control, and how Olivia lost everything in the end. My name is Ethan, and I always thought loyalty was the bedrock of any relationship. When I married Sophie 12 years ago, I believed we had built something unbreakable. A love based on trust and mutual respect. At least that's what I thought. Looking back, I realize how wrong I was. Sophie's betrayal wasn't subtle. It wasn't the hidden kind where guilt lingers in the shadows. No, she flaunted it right in front of me. At first, I thought I was imagining things. The lingering glances she shared with her coworker, Mark, the way they seemed to share private jokes, and how her phone was always glued to her hand, smiling at messages I wasn't allowed to see. But it all became clear one night at a dinner party we hosted for her colleagues. Sophie couldn't stop touching Mark, leaning in a little too close, whispering in his ear with a look in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. And Mark? He seemed smug, clearly aware that I could see it all. That night, a fire ignited within me, and I realized I couldn't ignore it anymore. Instead of confronting her, I devised a plan. Sophie was obsessed with her image. She was the perfect wife, the successful businesswoman, the socialite. I decided to exploit that. I hired a private investigator, and in just a week I confirmed what I suspected. Sophie and Mark had been meeting in hotels, and shockingly, even in my own car. I didn't confront Sophie immediately. Instead, I took action, starting with hiring the best divorce attorney in town. I made sure my assets were protected, secured, and out of her reach. When the time was right, I would expose everything. Sophie was planning an extravagant 12th wedding anniversary party, and I played along, pretending everything was normal. She was determined to make it a grand affair, inviting all her friends and colleagues, including Mark. As the night of the party approached, I knew this was my moment. When the party reached full swing, I tapped my glass for attention, microphone in hand. "Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate our 12th anniversary," I said, my voice steady. Sophie beamed, basking in the spotlight. "Marriage is built on trust, love, and respect," I continued, letting the words linger in the air. But sometimes people forget what those words truly mean. I then pressed a button, and the screen I'd set up displayed photos and videos of Sophie and Mark at hotels, laughing, touching, and whispering sweet things to each other. The room fell silent as the truth hit everyone. "This is the woman I've been married to for 12 years, I said, "and this is the man she chose over me." The party ended in chaos. Sophie tried to apologize, but I locked myself away. Mark, on the other hand, disappeared, realizing the mess he was now in. Over the next few weeks, Sophie's world crumbled. Her affair became public knowledge, and her carefully constructed reputation fell apart. She had to resign from her job, and her social life imploded. Our divorce was quick and merciless. Sophie left with nothing, no assets, no house, no savings. Everything was mine. A year later, I've moved on. I rebuilt my life, found new passions, and moved to a new city. Sophie, she's stuck with a mediocre job, a small apartment, and a fading social circle. The woman who thought she could humiliate me now has nothing left. Do I regret it? Not for a second. She underestimated me, and when I was done, she had nothing to flaunt. Revenge doesn't heal the pain, but it sure evens the playing field. Now I feel like I'm finally standing on solid ground. As time went on, the consequences of Sophie's actions became more apparent. The fallout was brutal. The social circles Sophie once basked in quickly turned their backs on her, many of them distancing themselves from her as her affair became public knowledge. Even her closest friends abandoned her, unable to reconcile with the woman they once admired. In the meantime, I focused on rebuilding my life. The money and assets I'd protected were a stepping stone, but the real reward was the freedom I regained. I could finally breathe again without the weight of betrayal hanging over me. I immersed myself in my career, traveling to places I'd always dreamed of and engaging in hobbies I'd long neglected. I found peace in these little joys, something I hadn't realized was missing until Sophie's betrayal ripped everything apart. Sophie, however, was left behind, struggling to rebuild a life that no longer had the foundations it once did. Her job was nothing like the high-status position she had before, and the once glamorous parties she attended were replaced with lonely nights in her small apartment. It seemed like the world had moved on without her, and she was left trying to pick up the pieces alone. A few months ago, I heard from an old mutual friend who relayed Sophie's struggles, her loneliness, her constant attempts to re-establish the life she once had. But it was too late. She was no longer the person she used to be, the woman who once thought she could have it all, who believed that betrayal wouldn't come with consequences, was now facing the harsh reality of her own actions. As for me, I can't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Revenge, as they say, is a dish best served cold. It wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my self-respect, and my future. I can look at myself in the mirror now, knowing I've walked away from the ashes of that toxic relationship with my head held high. Sophie may have lost everything, but I gained something far more valuable, my peace of mind, and the realization that I am stronger than I ever thought possible. It's been over a year since I severed ties with Sophie, and looking back, I realize how much I've grown. The pain of betrayal still stings at times, but it's no longer a constant ache. It's a distant memory like a scar that's faded with time. I found new purpose, new excitement in my life, and I can honestly say that I've never felt more alive. Sophie, on the other hand, continues to grapple with the consequences of her actions. She's tried to salvage her life, but the damage to her reputation was irreparable. She's no longer the social queen she once was, and her career has taken a hit from which it's unlikely to recover. Her personal life, it's been a string of failed attempts to make things right. But the trust she shattered is beyond repair. I often wonder if Sophie regrets what she did. If she looks back and realizes how much she lost, not just me, but everything she once held dear. In some strange way, I almost feel sorry for her. Almost. But I can't forget that she chose this path. She had every chance to do the right thing, to be honest, to protect what we had. But instead she chose the thrill of betrayal. Now all that's left is her loneliness and the consequences of her actions. As for me, I've moved on. I'm not the same man I was when Sophie first walked out on me. The person I am now is stronger, more resilient, and more aware of my own worth. I've learned that trust is sacred, and once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to rebuild. But I've also learned that I don't need anyone to define my happiness or my success. I am enough on my own. Revenge, while sweet in the moment, ultimately taught me something far more profound. It's not about watching someone else suffer. It's about reclaiming your power, your dignity, and your future. Sophie made her choices, and I made mine. Now I'm living the life I've always dreamed of, free from the chains of the past. As the dust settles, I can honestly say I have no regrets. The revenge wasn't just sweet. It was necessary. Olivia thought she could play me for a fool, flaunting her betrayal as if there would be no consequences. But in the end, she paid the price for her actions. I rebuilt my life, stronger and more determined than ever, leaving behind the shattered marriage and the woman who chose to throw it all away. As for Olivia, she's left picking up the pieces of a life she thought she could control. But the truth has a way of unraveling even the most carefully crafted facades. She lost not just me, but everything that once defined her. and in some twisted way I have peace knowing that justice was served. Revenge might not heal all wounds, but it sure has a way of making you feel whole again.